Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome back to Code 30 Things in 30 Days with CSS3. Today is day number 2, and we're going to be doing a lesson that I call Sexy Typography. So over here in the browser, you can see, basically in the final result, you can kind of see what it is we're going to be building. So in CSS3, what's kind of neat is you can make some really cool text effects. Just with CSS3, you don't need Photoshop or anything like that. So I wanted to highlight a couple of those things in CSS3 in today's lesson. It's pretty simple, shouldn't take us too long, but I think it's gonna be fun and might kind of give you a few ideas of what you can do with CSS3 on your own websites and applications and so on. All right, so before we start coding, you're gonna need the course files, the final course files. So in this module, there's gonna be a lesson entitled Download the Course Files, or whatever it is that I name it at the time. And you could just click on that link. It'll take you to a Dropbox link. It should direct download that today's course files, which should be entitled 2-Sexy Typography. There will be an index file, a sandbox.css file, and a final.css file. And that's what you need for today. The index, you don't need to concern yourself with other than looking at seeing how the markup is laid out. Sandbox.css is where you're going to be coding your own CSS. And then the final CSS is what you're going to use for reference. It gives you the final result over here in the browser. You could see down here, you can use it for reference. That's what we're going to try to build. The final CSS is what gets you that result. Okay, so go ahead and download that. You can pause the video, do whatever you need to do. And once you're done with that, come back, open it up in your code editor, and let's get started. So first things first, in your sandbox.css, open up a new line, and let's get coding. So we need to code the first example here. Cool shadow, I call it. Basically, it has this cool retro shadow that kind of offsets behind and off to the bottom right of the text. And it's this cool effect, and that's purely CSS. So let's do that. It's pretty straightforward and simple. All you got to do is select that class. So in our index, let's find out what it's called. Shadow typo is the class I called it. Shadow-typo. And then we're going to position that relative, like so. We're going to display inline block. Font size, we need to make that quite large, so 4M. In fact, let's make it 4rem to be consistent with CSS3. Text transform, we want that to be uppercase, all uppercase. The color, let's go 00, B3, B4. And then here's where the magic happens. So let me just save this and head over here to the browser. We're basically halfway there. We're actually 99% of the way there. It looks pretty much the same as down here, although 4rem made this quite a bit smaller. So me head back to our code editor, maybe make that something like 6rem. Let's see what that does. Okay, go back. It's a little bit big, but whatever you want to do, it's up to you. Now all we need to do is add a text shadow in CSS3, but 2 text shadows. So we're going to have a transparent text shadow behind the letters, and then another text shadow behind that one. It gives that kind of separation. So head back here to your CSS, your sandbox.css, and we're going to go text shadow, 3 pixels, 3 pixels. That's vertical and horizontal offset, 3 pixels and 3 pixels. So we're going to go down and over. 0 pixels, we don't want any blur, and the number is going to be E7EEF1. That is the color of the background container. So you're not going to see anything at all on purpose. Comma, 1 more value in here. 8 pixels, 8 pixels. So we're offsetting this 8 pixels down and 8 pixels over. And then the blur, 0. We don't want any blur on this whatsoever. And then we're going to do RGBA for red, green, blue, alpha. And 0, 0, 0. So this is like going to give us black. But then the alpha channel, 0.1, which is going to make it like 10%. So it's going to be very, very transparent. It's only going to be 10% visible. Semicolon, save that, head over to your browser, and you can see you're done. Just like that. Pretty cool text shadow effect. You got that. You can see here, you got that 3 pixel offset and then the 8 pixel offset. Okay, so that was it for the cool shadow version. Let's go down to the 3D type, and we're going to make a bit of a 3-dimensional effect. So over here in the browser, this one's kind of cool. It's angled. It's got this like depth and then like kind of a layer at the back that's a bit darker. So you can see here you got the text on an angle, a bit of a depth going on there, like a pops out, and then there's like a layer at the back that's darker, and then this like very subtle shadow. It's very simple. We're just going to be playing with some transforms and some text shadow. Very simple. So let's go back here to our code editor, sandbox.css. All right, so we're going to select that class, and that's going to be called 3D typo. I wrote 3D literally because you can't start a class with a number. So just put 3D dash typo like that. And then we're going to start with the font size. Let's do 6 rem again. And then we're going to say text transform uppercase. And then the color is going to be F2395. Oops, A. And then we're going to do some transforms. So I'm going to start off with the transform here. And then we're going to say skew is the first value of the transform property. Skew. And then 2 values, X and Y, -5 degrees, comma, -5 degrees. That's going to angle it. And then we're going to rotate it 5 degrees. Whoops, that's got to be connected. Just like that. So if I save that and check it out over here in the browser, it basically looks like it's italic. But you can see when I highlight it, my cursor highlight is actually on an angle. And when you highlight text that's italic, it doesn't necessarily do that. So this is actually being angled and rotated a little bit. If I were to be a bit more dramatic, you would see, that this is actually, so I'm going to rotate it even more, like 25 degrees. So check it out. You can see that that's what I'm doing. So I'm going to put that back to 5 degrees on the rotate, and then I'm going to do the degrees, -5 and -5, and we're good to go. Okay, so now because transform is CSS3, sometimes some browsers don't necessarily know what that is, so we got to use browser prefixes. You can check out caniuse.com and see how valid transform property is in CSS3 and how cross-browser compatible it is. But I'm just going to, for good practice, put in WebKit transform and essentially just copy this. It's exactly the same thing, and just paste that in. So same thing, save it, and now let's keep going. So we're going to do the transform origin. So I want to change the origin of where it rotates and where it's transforming, because I'm pretty sure currently it goes from the top left. I think that's the default transform origin. So where it transforms from and where it rotates from. So that's that. You can change where you want that origin to be. So I'm going to say center. So save that. You would notice this more if I change the values of the skew and the rotate to something more dramatic. You'd see that it's rotating from the center. So why don't I give you an example of that? So I'm going to comment this out, 20 and 20. So if I were to say bottom right and save and go back here, you can see it's actually, the origin is in a separate spot versus like top left, and then go back here. You can see now it's in a different spot. So it's actually, the origin of the transform is in different positions of the element. So we want center, so it's nice and centered. Perfect. Now back in the code editor here, we're going to copy this, but then have the browser prefix version, transform origin, but it's going to be WebKit transform origin. And now we need to just do some text shadows. It's very simple. We're just going to do a lot of text shadows in one text shadow property here. So text shadow, we're going to say 1 pixel. We've done this before, D10 E31. I'm going to copy that value because I'm going to use it a lot. Now, if I stopped there, you wouldn't see much over here. It's just a slight darker shadow behind it. So let me save this. Oh, I'm going to change this back to 5 degrees, 5 all around. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to put a comma and return, go back and under here. And I'm going to do another couple values, 2 pixels, 2 pixels. I'm going to paste that value here. Copy this. I'm going to put a comma. And we're going to change this from 2 and 2 to 3 and 3. Now you catch the idea. I'm going to do this up until 7. So just do that. There we go. So save that, semicolon at the end. Check it out and see what we got so far. Perfect. It's got that kind of angle depth kind of that pops out. Looks great, but there's still more to it. We have another layer. So let's go back here to our editor, comma. I'm going to paste and change this to 8 and 8, but change the color value to a darker salmony red color, which is going to be 890920. Copy that value, Paste it a couple more times. We're going to change this to 9 and 9 and 10 and 10. Semicolon at the end. Check it out in your browser. We basically finished it, but there's one little element left, and that's just kind of this broad blur in the background. You can see here as the final example. There's a bit of a background shadow, an actual shadow back there that just gives it more depth. It pops out more than up here. So let's go back here and add one more value. So a comma, we're going to go 11 pixels, but for the blur property, 15 pixels. So quite blurry, very blurry in fact. And RGBA, we're going to do 000, which is black, but then another comma. Now we need the alpha channel. We're going to go 0.5, which is 50% transparent. Semicolon, save that, head back over, and there we are in the browser. We're done. 3D type, we've got that depth. We've got that little layer there that's darker, and then the shadow in the background. So we've got the cool shadow, the retro style shadow there, and then we've got the 3D type that pops out using text shadow. So it's quite simple, but it's just a matter of playing around with the values and giving the illusion that you have three-dimensional text. So all of this is done in CSS3 exclusively, just a dozen or so lines of CSS. Very simple. Whereas if you were to do this in Photoshop, you'd have to make it in Photoshop. You'd have to export it for like Retina and normal, and then put the images, and you're adding more bandwidth, and it just takes too long just to create something that you could just do simply in CSS3. So that is it for day 2, sexy typography. A little bit simpler of a day today than yesterday. Day 1 was quite the beast, but today is simpler, just to kind of give you a bit of breathing room before we get into some pretty awesome and difficult stuff as we go along in this journey. Hope you enjoyed day 2. I'll see you tomorrow in day number 3. Peace, cheers, gotta go, bye.